Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. I am your host, Tim Sheils, and I am joined by my buddy and bro, Wayne Breezie Brown. Wayne, how are we doing today, man?
Doing good, doing real good. Basketball season's almost over. It's coming to an end. And it's time to really get into these playoffs. So I'm really excited, man. But everything is well on my end.
That's good to hear, man. And yeah, since the Celtics beat the Toronto Raptors without a couple players in their lineup, mainly Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart, took that game 97-93. Not a very notable or noteworthy game, but overall, Celtics take the win, end up clinching that 2 seed, and now they've got 2 games left that essentially mean nothing. So it'll be interesting to see if they rest people down the line and how that plays out. Now it's kind of just a waiting game because they're not able to move up or down. They're staying in that 2 seed. Nothing's going to be changing there in that regard. They already rested Marcus Smart the other night. Didn't have Al Horford play on Wednesday because of the back-to-back, but I'm just wondering how they kind of try and stagger some of these minutes now. Like, do you still got that roster spot open, right? So maybe you go after a guy like who's in Maine and just sign him so you have another body like Tony Snell who can just eat up a couple minutes for these last few games. I'm hoping that we see like a starting five that has, Luke Cornett, Mike Muscala, Sam Hauser, like JD Davison in there. Just because at this point now, these 2 games really don't matter. The only thing that it could potentially impact, and we will get to that, is how that 7 and 8 seed line up. And it's sort of weird now looking back at how the playoffs are usually structured, how they used to be before the play-in, where it's like, let's see what happens, how the 7 and 8 seed kind of land. And now it really doesn't matter as much because 7 and 8 seed are going to face off in that play-in tournament. And we will talk about that a little bit today. But are you expecting them to rest some guys down these games? Because I feel like they kind of have to, and I feel like that's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's definitely the right thing to do now, especially since number 2 is locked. They
Mm.
can't get to number 1, and they're not going to fall to number 3. So what's the purpose? I mean, I guess you want your guys to go out there and get, some reps and things like that. But listen, I'm a firm believer when Tatum takes a night off, he comes back super fresh. When Jaylen Brown takes a night off, he comes back super fresh. When Marcus Smart, Al Horford, so forth and so forth. So listen, if they're not playing for anything, now it's the time to take off. Before a week ago, I was like, look, they need to play. They can push for that first seed, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But now, listen, the second seed is pretty much locked, signed, sealed, and delivered. And it was going to be really interesting to see who we see starting in these lineups. I mean, I know Grant Williams would be one of the starting spots, and it can be good for them too, though, Tim, because now these guys can get several minutes. Will Peyton Pritchard be back? I would like to see him out there if he's going to be healthy and things like that. A quick question: would you put Derek White in those lineups? That's. I mean, you're not going to rest everybody, I don't think, but he deserves a rest. He's probably been the most consistent basketball player the Celtics have had all season long, him and Malcolm Brogdon. So it's going to be really interesting to see
I
what you.
mean, you got a good point there with Dirk, and I worry about that because he did end up like tweaking his ankle in
know.
that game,
I
and
know.
like I immediately worried about it because like you never see him kind of hobble, and he shook it off. He played the rest of the game. He still had a very productive night. I think he had 17 points, so like he was third leading scorer behind Brogdon, who had a monster night, his
A
best
monster.
performance by far, and I think is also kind of just stamp of approval for six man of the year there. Had Joe Mazzulla saying his praises after as well. But Derek definitely deserves a rest.
He
The
deserves
poor
it.
guy is just putting himself through the ringer, right? So I'm hoping that Pritchard actually can come back. That's a guy that you kind of in this whole equation, this looking at the arithmetic of this roster and lineup, he kind of gets lost in the equation, so to speak. And because of that, I think he had plantar fasciitis. He tweaked his ankle on that final drive where Evan Mobley fell on top of him
Mhm.
during that Cavs game that they lost in overtime with the infamous Grant Williams free throws. But I hope that he's back just in case you need him because you never know, or you might want to toss him out there just to kind of give a spark if there's any kind of issue, or if you need to put some 3 pointers out there.
Yeah.
You need some 3 point shooters. So we'll see if he's healthy. I imagine that if he is, that he will get some run. I'm hoping that they at least manage to get him in that last game these two games. I mean, the Raptors and the Hawks are these last two games, and both of those teams are going to be fighting in some shape, way, manner, or form for
Yeah.
seeding.
Yeah.
Um, and that's sort of what ends up tying into the conversation when you look at the 7 and 8 seed. So this is an important note, and to be honest, I didn't think that this game was particularly noteworthy either. Didn't really give me any kind of feeling whatsoever, except really one takeaway. But the Celtics lost the 76ers on Tuesday, 103 to 101. Narrow loss. Didn't have Jalen Brown, didn't have Robert Williams. And it makes sense now because Al Horford, second night of a back to back, he rests. So what do? They rest Rob the first night, have him play against the Raptors. So that made a lot of sense. And it was the same thing where they didn't have.
Tatum.
Didn't have Jalen Brown, and then the game two, they didn't have Jason Tatum. So they are trying to stagger these guys, which is an encouraging sign. But even without those guys in the fold, Celtics still made a game of things. Couple mistakes here or there that you really want to tighten up on, but nothing that I overly am upset about or get too emotional about. But Joel Embiid has a MVP caliber. Like when I talked about this, the stamp, that's what Joel Embiid, I think, did with that performance. That is the only takeaway I have from that game. 52 points, hyper efficient, like something like 20 to 25 shooting from the field, just like a monster night. And so many of them were just jumpers where it was just money. Joel Embiid looked fantastic. And in an otherwise insignificant game, I think that is like my main takeaway is I think that was kind of like his closing argument on his season for like the MVP candidacy. I
Yeah.
think that was I think that was it. Like I don't know about you, and you can share your thoughts on it for sure. Um, I feel like it's his time now. As much as it sucks, and I want to say Jason Tatum is the MVP, and he played the most games and most minutes, and so on and so forth, out of all of the guys who are up for consideration. I feel like it's Joel Embiid's time to take that award home.
It's tough, man. These big guys usually are the ones that get it, man. They're the more dominant forces out there. They're scoring from everywhere over the court. Usually it's Jokic. He's in the conversation every single year, and Embiid is in the conversation. And at one point, it will be Jason Tatum's time. But you can say that in this particular game, Joel Embiid put his stamp on the MVP. But listen, I still feel the Celtics allowed him to do a lot of that stuff. I mean, like he was just getting to a spot every single time, and a lot of those shots weren't even contested. And I mean, it was just like bam, and it's all short stuff too, right? Like he took a couple of threes, but he got to his spot, all super mid range, can jump over everybody, and was nailing his shots. I don't know if I'm more concerned about the way that the Celtics were playing defense on him, or were they just trying to, get through the game, get out injury free, possibly get a win? Because the Celtics still could have won that game. I mean, they had the lead at one point in the game, Tim, and it was just like, they kind of let Embiid back in the game by him setting the little small screen, the little pick. There wasn't a roll. It was like a pick and pop, but it was all mid range. It was just like, boom, bam, like swat. I'm like, dang, do they not know that he's going to do that? I mean, he did it all night long. He was a dominant force around there underneath the rim. And the Celtics, I mean, when you don't have your main bigs out there, you're going to get out rebounded. You're going to miss those second chance shots, opportunities, and things like that. And Philly, they beat the Celtics. They just beat the Celtics. But if I am concerned about one thing, and I don't know how concerned you are, Tim, but the Celtics are struggling to me in the free throws. They're getting to the line, they're getting the calls, and then they're not making their free throws. You make your free throws in this game, you probably win by 7. So it's just like, dang, like, and then in the game against Toronto, they missed a few free throws as well. I don't know what the free throw percentage is off the top of my head, but they were missing free throws as well. So like they're we complain about us not getting the bonus and getting the shots and getting the free throws, but when we get there, we blow it. And it's not just, it's everybody. You know what I'm saying? So got to do better. Got to make those free throws because believe it or not, it's about to be really dominant with all these teams. I don't care who we play. I don't care if it's the Atlanta Hawks, the Toronto Raptors, the Miami Heat. I definitely don't want to see the Heat. I forgot that they had Kyle Lowry too. He ain't played all year long until the
Yeah,
last night. I watched him and I'm like, oh, he's a gnat. He's a nagging gnat for the Celtics, man. Ugh. I don't want to see Miami, bro. I just don't.
yeah.
Grand slams, no-hitters, double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And new customers en masse can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads and player props and much, much more. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Now, you must be 21 or over and present in Massachusetts to take part in this deal. Your first initial wager must be made with real money. $10 initial deposit required. Bonus is issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Hope and help is here. If you have a gambling problem, check out gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. Go to GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
And I think the free throw conversation, I think that just comes down to just pure execution, right? I know that Grant Williams has had some free throw issues. Jaylen Brown has not been entirely
Oh gosh.
consistent from the line this season, too. I mean, outside of that, I mean, those are like kind of like the two guys that I think of in terms of having some free throw issues. Like Robert Williams goes to the line sometimes. He usually goes 1 of 2. Sometimes, if you're fortunate, he goes 2 of 2. So, like, yeah, you do want to see them do better at the line there. And ultimately, your line share free throws are going to be coming from guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. But you do see guys like Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon also get to the line a fair amount now, too. Both of those guys have become extremely aggressive. More so Derek White because he's really taken a step forward in his offensive game. Malcolm Brogdon's kind of been one of their main rim pressure guys in terms of just like line driving it like straight to the rim and getting the ball in the basket. So ultimately, yeah, you want to see them execute better on the free throws. In terms of that 76ers game, they're 3-1 against. They wrap up the season series against them 3-1.
Yeah. I
So
just swept them.
yeah, I
I'm
mean, like,
sorry,
yeah,
Tim.
I wanted to sweep. I get it. I get it. Everyone wants to sweep, right? It's
I
it's
just
nice and
wanted
big
to.
and sexy to be like, oh yeah, we swept
It's
this
not
team
just
like 4-0.
it's not just the sexiness in it, Tim.
Yeah,
It's pure domination saying we owned you
yeah,
that year.
I
Like, you know
get
what
it.
I mean? There was a year the Celtics couldn't beat the 76ers,
And
maybe.
then they walloped them in the playoffs.
Oh
So
my
it's like,
gosh. And then they just yeah, you get what I'm saying?
yeah,
I'm hoping that we don't get that vice versa juju this year if we see them in the playoffs. But I don't fear the 76ers as much as I fear some of these other teams because it's Joel Embiid. And if when we're full strength, okay, he'll still get his 30 plus points, but the rest of the team won't be as active or as active. I mean, come on, man. PJ, what was his name?
three of
Come on,
four
Tucker.
on the
Come
night.
on.
He had 3 threes in that fourth quarter in like the last like 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, that concerned me though. Not the fact that he was
That they
making
didn't
his
go up
threes.
and guard him.
They didn't contest his
He
threes.
took one and he hit it, and that should have been like, okay, well, we have to now honor that guy. But they kept the last one. I think was the worst because they had two guys who were like,
Was that the
"Are we
one
gonna
on
let him shoot?"
Tatum?
It wasn't. I don't know if it was on Tatum, but it
Tatum
was
didn't defend
him
one.
and Derek White were like in that corner, ready to contest, and then they stopped, and then he took it and hit it, and it's like it was the one I think to put them up by 6, maybe, or
I
maybe
don't
to put
know.
them up by 3 again.
Okay. All I know was there was one that Tatum didn't go out to guard. He kind of like
Yeah,
left him there. And the bench was like, I don't know if they were whatting Tatum or whatting the fact that he actually hit the joint because he was missing all night, all season. Like,
could have been either, could have been both, bit of
yeah,
both.
I just got to defend the corner three more than any three.
That
Got to
corner
defend the
office, man.
corner three. Yeah, the highest percentage shot on the field. You got to defend that one.
I mean, so ultimately, I think like that Philly game, I don't think that they were given their full effort. I mean, they didn't have everybody in
I
house, and
know. You're right, Tim.
like I get it. Like they had a
They almost
chance to
won.
win it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my point. They could have won,
they
um,
didn't,
but they
and
didn't.
that's it.
Right. And I'm not mad, but you know me. I'm gonna go look at the flaws I'm the type of coach that's gonna work on the things that where we messed up. I don't care if we win or lose. I wanna know where we could have been better. That's just always
Yeah.
who I've been. Even doing content creating, I want to know where could I be better. What was the feedback? What was the worst part? This is that and the third because I want to work on that part. Those are my weaknesses. So the weaknesses to me was just defending the perimeter, and it wasn't even the whole perimeter. It literally was just those corner threes. Rule of thumb: just don't leave anybody wide open. You
Yeah.
can't leave anybody wide open in the NBA anymore. This is not 1995.
It's true, especially with big guys being able to stretch the floor. But in terms of looking past that game now, that game essentially put it away, out of reach entirely, officially, that Boston was not going to be able to go for that one seed.
Correct.
And now, after the win against Toronto, that's it. Two seeds locked in. Don't have to worry about any more games. Now, for Philadelphia, they've got, I think it's 2.5 games up on the Cavaliers right now. So hypothetically, like they need to like win one more game to officially put the third seed to bed. They'll have the third seed locked up, and they play against the Miami Heat tonight. Now, this ties into the conversation about the 7 and 8 seed that I mentioned before, mainly because the Miami Heat right now sit in seventh place, but they're only a game and a half ahead of the Atlanta Hawks, who are only one game ahead of the Toronto Raptors. So 7, 8, and 9 seed are like an absolute crapshoot right now. So those are three of the four teams that are going to probably most likely be in that play-in tournament, with 7 and 8 facing off for the chance to play against the Celtics as the 7 seed. So the Heat play tonight against the 76ers. If the Heat lose and the 76ers win, 76ers are going to rest probably their last two games because, again, just like the Celtics, their seeding is going to be locked in, and that's going to be that. The Hawks play against the 76ers on Friday night. So if the 76ers win tonight and put the third seed to bed officially, and the Hawks come out, they have to win in order to kind of keep up with the seeding. They're going to go against the 76ers team that's resting. And so they've got a potential chance to go ahead and leapfrog the Miami Heat. Heat are going to be going against the 76ers, and then I believe it's, oh geez, now I got to pull it up because they're going against, I think it's the Magic and then the Wizards. So it's the Wizards and the Magic for
The
after the
Wizards and the Magic.
76ers.
How cool is that? The Wizards
Yeah,
and the Magic.
go figure.
Yeah.
I don't know what came first, the Magic or the Wizards.
I
I digress.
yeah.
Not in the terms of team name. It was, I'm pretty sure it was the Magic first because the Wizards used to be the Washington Bullets.
It used to be the Bullets. There you go.
It's kind of a cool nickname, a little bit edgy, but kind of cool.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think the Hawks have a really good chance of going ahead and leapfrogging into that 7 seed. Hypothetically speaking, it doesn't really matter too much, just because the loser of that 7 versus 8 seed battle in game 1 of the play-in tournament is going to be whoever gets the 7 seed. It does, however, control who gets home court in that matchup. So if Miami's 7, they're going to play Miami. If Atlanta's 7, they're going to play in Atlanta. Now, I think it's going to be one of those two teams that Boston ultimately faces in the round 1 matchup. Now, for me, and I tend to agree with this, when you look at the matchups, who will the Celtics most likely face and who would give them the most trouble? I think it's very easy to say that it would be the Miami Heat. I know that they're having an underwhelming season, but it's still the Miami Heat. It's still Jimmy Butler. We talked about this last show, but Jimmy
Adebayo.
Butler very much. He gives me, you know what he gives me? He gives me DeMar DeRozan vibes in the
There you
way that
go.
he scores. It's like the perfect analogy because they both use that mid range like crazy. They're both like very savvy
They're both
veterans.
long, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
And they just draw contact. They get to the line a lot. They get like 15, 20 free throws just because they play like that old school kind of basketball style. Because they're both kind of from that same era to an extent. But I think Miami is the team that I would worry about. I am hoping that it is the Hawks. But they pose different problems, and I can get to that. But I know you mentioned it before, but what are your thoughts? Do you think that Miami is the team to really worry about? Because I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah, because it's like they're just built to beat the stuff. They're matched up the best for the Celtics. Don't get it twisted. I think the Hawks match up better at the point guard position. That's it. That's where they match up better. I feel like our bigs can take their bigs. I feel like our wings can handle their wings. But when you come to the point guard, when it comes to Ice Tray doing his thing, he can just hit from anywhere on the court. Now he's defendable. It's just that Guys might like Marcus Smart may end up in foul trouble. Guys like Derek White may end up in foul trouble. And that's what you don't want, because that's when, they go off. But I'm telling you, man, these Miami Heat, and I'm not scared of them. It's just more like, dang, if we can bypass
They're
them,
going to be annoying, right?
that's
That's it.
what it is.
You
They're
don't
like,
think they're
yeah,
going to win, but you think they're going to be really annoying in the
I
process. And
hate to
it
say
just,
it, it will go 7 games.
I really don't want it to. And
I
that's the
know.
issue, right? Like, I talked about this a little bit before where it's like you kind of want the Celtics to kind of have that first round matchup be a bit of a test to kind of push them. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, they sort of dealt with that last year. And
They
you
tired
can
out.
argue, yeah, I was gonna say you can argue that it cost them the NBA
They
Finals
got
because
worn
they were
out.
banged up and tired by the time they got there because they had 2 Game 7 series, one against the Heat and one against the Bucks, both of which are very physical teams. So if you can avoid that, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would. It literally would. And so it's going to come down to what these other teams do. Now that I'm glad you brought that up, because we play the Hawks in our last game at home, right? Uh,
Yeah, and
we
that
want to beat
also
them.
ties in the whole thing where it's like if the Celtics are resting and they want the Hawks to have home court in that play-in, they just rest guys and say,
And
"Screw it, go ahead,
I
like
think that's
go
the
ahead
game
and
plan.
play," you
I
know?
think that's the rest of the rest game. That's the rest all be all. Let's go get our G League players and bring them on up. That's the game. I think that's the rest game. I think we'll see some players play in the matchup in Toronto, but I think that last game, I think that's going to be the rest game.
Yeah, and I mean it should be. I mean, it's the last game of the season at that point. You know what you are or aren't playing for. And I think for Boston specifically, when you're looking at these matchups, Atlanta poses their own problems, right? They've got like multiple really physical bigs that can bang down low, especially Clint Capella. That dude is a rebound monster. And when we talked about the Celtics this year specifically, those smaller, shifty guards are really what were going to give them problems. You have to deal with DeJounte Murray, who I feel like sometimes I still forget that he's on Atlanta because they haven't played the Hawks a ton this year,
Correct.
but he's a very solid player. And you have Trey Young in the mix there too, of course, and he's a problem in the playoffs. He's going to be able to get to the line, and he's a crazy 3-point shooter. And that's where those 3 guard rotation that you have with the Celtics between White, Brogdon, and Smart, you've got a great mix there, and that is going to allow them to toss a bunch of different looks. And I think the big thing that goes in Boston's favor in a matchup against Atlanta is a lot of their bigs that Boston has. I mean, a lot of Boston's bigs are able to stretch the floor. And I
Correct.
think that's going to pull their bigs out of the paint. Adding Mike Muscala, he played a lot of minutes. He got minutes over Grant Williams, and so did Blake Griffin to a certain extent. Because Grant's been struggling a bit. You need him to get back to what he needs, what he needs to be in terms of what he's giving you off of the bench. Regardless of what role you have him in, he needs to be hustling, he needs to be getting rebounds. And he's had some flashes of that. You just need him to get back his confidence and his consistency. But Mike Muscala's ability to stretch the floor and shoot threes, that might factor into a series against Atlanta because you can throw him out there at the center spot as a stretch 5 or even throw him at that 4 spot. He gives you a little bit of roster flexibility there. And I think that could play a factor in any series against Atlanta. So that's what I would look at too. And I don't think that Atlanta has any real, I don't want to say they don't have any, but I think you have to ask like who's going to guard Jason Tatum, and then who's going to guard Jalen Brown. Is it going to be John Collins? Like, who
No,
are you throwing at him? And
easy.
that's kind of where I think that would play into their favor more than a series against Miami. Obviously, familiarity. Eric Spoelstra is a fantastic head coach, one of the best, if not the best, still in the league. He poses so many matchup problems because of their 3-point shooting. And even if they've had a very down year by their standards, I still wouldn't want to choose Miami in a series to go against because it will be a grinder. It would make me think of that series against the Nets where, it was, every single game was decided by 7 points or less. And
Yeah.
even though it was a sweep, it was still a very brutal series where you kind of felt like any game could have gone either way. And I think that the Celtics, and I think most Celtics fans would want to try and avoid that. And the plus side is if it ends up being a situation where the Atlanta Hawks end up winning out that series and they do get the 7 seed and they go against the Celtics, it means that Miami most likely is going to be that 8 seed if they don't lose out. So they would have to go against the Bucks, and that gives the Bucks a whole lot of problems too, because there is history there as well. So whatever path makes it easiest for Boston and the most difficult for other people, I'm totally on board for. And I do think that also kind of played into the factor of avoid the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they are also going to be a matchup problem too. So if your path is the Hawks, then the winner of the Nets 76ers, and then most likely the Bucks, so be it. Because I think that's probably the best path I can think of, where the Celtics aren't going to be completely draining all of their energy in a series. Hopefully.
It's definitely the clearest path. But it would be best if if things worked out. Do the Celtics get a little bit of luck on their side? I mean, we still got to go out there and play and do our daggone job, right? We still got to go out there and impose our will on teams. But if we can get some of these teams where we match up best against, that would be really good for the Boston Celtics. It'd be good for them to get more and more rest as they go along, because every round is going to be a different level of difficulty for the Celtics. So we'll see how it shapes out. But again, I'm very proud of our team. We had a great start to the season. I feel like we're having a great finish to the season as well. The one thing that I'm learning more about basketball is it's not won after game one. It's not lost after game one. There 80 plus games. Like, there's time, for things to work themselves out. Look at how the West is shaping out, right? You got teams playing, if you win one, the Lakers would have won last night, they would have ended with the 5th seed. It's so weird how it's all set up, but right now they're in the 7th seed, I think. So the NBA is definitely shaping up, but for the Boston Celtics, they just got to continue to do what they're doing, man. They have a game plan, and if they bring it every night, I just don't see, Tim, how any team will pose a problem to the Celtics. And that doesn't mean they necessarily just have to hit all 3-pointers every single night. No, they just got to bring it every night. The energy has to be right, less mistakes. Like, don't keep turning the ball over. Don't play sound basketball. Fundamentals will be key come playoff talk.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where it's at right now. I think ultimately, when we talked about these last 2 games and about resting everything like that, you can make the argument for trying to keep into a rhythm, but I feel like the Celtics don't really need that right now. I think that they've been playing pretty damn good at down the stretch. Had a couple games where we were upset, but outside of that, like, you really can't ask for too much more. If everything goes swimmingly and this is where they end up and they don't win any more games, still a 55-win season. And considering how the offseasons, came to a close with everything with Ime Udoka and Danilo Gallinari and then Rob having surgery, this was a really, really good season. And I'm proud of the way the team kind of fought through some stuff, figured some stuff out. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to see some really good basketball out of them come playoff time, which will be very, very soon. Besides that, I don't know if you have anything else, Wayne, to wrap up before we bring it to a close.
C's up all day, baby. Get your vitamin C.
Damn straight. Okay. All righty, folks. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Vitamin C's. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you guys are wanting for content, anything like that. Again, we want to get better. We want to improve. We want to keep building up. So let us know. Other than that, once again, we're part of the CLNS Media Network, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet.